Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We've done this a couple times before, and it's proved to be pretty popular. We have here today West Michigan's most influential quality professionals, and they're going to provide a panel discussion on contemporary quality issues. And these folks are colleagues of mine. Many of you know me. There's a couple new people in the audience today, so I'm, for the most part, many of you know me as your advisor or as your instructor, but first and foremost, I am a quality professional. These are my colleagues, and it's been a pleasure working with these guys. They do a super job for West Michigan and for the organizations that they serve. There might be one or two others that pop in, and we'll just make them do jumping jacks or something for being late, or push-ups or what have you. Might be interesting to watch. And this is being filmed by GRCC TV, and which is really cool. I'm going to introduce the panel, and then I'm going to introduce our chair, Matt, who is going to moderate this session. First, I'd like to acknowledge a couple people. We have Jamin Bishop here. Jamin is our vice chair of the student branch. Again, Matt Weidman is the chair of our student branch. We have Laura Porritt. Laura, you want to pop your head out here? Oh, see the hand up there waving? Okay. She's up there in the booth. She is doing the audio visual for us and recording this. And without further ado, I will introduce our speakers. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, just wave. We have Jim Anderson, and Jim Anderson is from Ventra in Ionia. And we don't have Paul Prenti here. Paul Prenti was a cancellation, but you have the program in front of you. Paul is not going to be able to make it tonight. Sean Jones, we were hoping to have tonight. Sean is from Ventura Manufacturing, and that's in Zeeland. We have here Jim Van Weeren, senior engineer from ODL. We have here Mike Tappy. Mike is a seasoned quality professional. Is it Display Pack, Mike?
Calling me old.
Yeah. Yes.
He's got you.
Yeah, Display Pack.
That's diplomatic for old, yeah. From Display Pack, we have here Brian Maas, quality from Spectrum. And we're hoping to have Andrea here. Andrea is from Johnson Controls. And we have Brian Horseman here. Brian is a senior quality engineer in product development and supplier quality assurance for Steelcase. And we have Michael Hurt here, warranty manager for ADAC Automotive. So I present to you West Michigan's most influential quality professionals. Give them a round of applause, please. Okay, our chair of the section is going to moderate the rest of this, and he has some questions that were developed by my Management 370 course class students, and since then prioritized. Last week we actually prioritized these, and Matt's got a lineup of questions, and after maybe a handful, Matt will look to the audience and take a couple questions from you, and then get back to the prepared questions. What we'll need to do, since we don't have a mic to pass around, Matt, if you would repeat the question so we can get it on the video, okay? So I give you Matt Weidman. He is quality at Amway.
I actually work in manufacturing, but work with quality in manufacturing. So, first question we have for our panel today is, what areas do you feel most companies are sorely lacking in their quality management? Don't all buzz in at once.
Gonna go right to the tough stuff.
But the meat of the product, right?
I think today, if you look around, at least from my experiences in the companies that I've worked with and worked for, one of the biggest misunderstandings, if not misdirections, is the commitment from the management team. I'm not sure, everyone expects quality to get better. Everyone expects quality to improve things. Everyone expects their products to be as good as they can be. But none of that happens without the commitment of the management team to say to you and to me, these things need to be done. And I think that from my perspective, in my personal opinion, that's one of the things that's still lacking in today's manufacturing, healthcare, and also some other opportunities, education. Quality is across the board. I think that's one of the things that you need to take a look at. And every organization that has a quality professional working for them needs to have someone to support that quality professional, and quality comes from the top down.
I'll go ahead and tap in on that because I'll agree. I first want to ask how many of you in the crowd tonight are in like a healthcare track or health sciences maybe? Okay, so we got good representation there as well. Again, I have about 30 plus years in manufacturing before coming to Spectrum Health here in Grand Rapids, but I think there is still a perception issue, as Jim's alluded to, that even in healthcare at times, people might look at quality professionals as the cop on the beat. You're here, you're not sometimes viewed as the most positive because you do have to dwell with the things that aren't working right or going right. You're constantly called upon to deliver feedback, be it customer feedback or in our case patient feedback, and sometimes people they don't want to go down that path. Can be doing things 98, 99% well. In quality by nature, we go to that 1 to 2% that we feel we have to report on for improvement. So I think perception of the profession.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. What is the biggest challenge that you face in your profession?
I'll kick it off because I'll allow my peers to think as well. It goes back to what I was just talking about. It is overcoming that perception. It's if you're an individual contributor or if you're a manager or team leader, it's trying to show value to the organization you work for. Is what can you or your team bring from quality to truly collaborate and become part of either a service line or a business unit and be viewed upon as someone they want in the meeting. Reporting on these measures. So today you have to grow outside just the toolbox and want to know more about the strategic direction and how you can contribute in a broader fashion. I know that'll kick some thoughts off.
I think the other thing that happens is that quality is basically a given. It's become a given as far as the expectations of customers, including you as a customer. If you go to buy an iPhone, you want to make sure that it works. It's going to work for a period of time. With that, then the perception of quality is that I know it when I see it. And along with that then happens is that quality becomes everybody's job. With that then, the profession, what happens is that there are tools that the profession brings in order for continuous improvement, to be able to define stability, to be able to look at what we do and how can we do it better. But if there's the concept of quality is everybody's job, two things happen. First of all, one of the scary things is that it's the lack of knowledge in quality management that is detrimental. It's really the partial knowledge of quality management that's detrimental, because people don't understand exactly how it all fits together. So with that, what happens is that quality becomes everybody's job, which then there's an old adage, if it's everybody's job, it's nobody's job. And then at the same time, without bringing the tools in order to actually contribute and recognizing those tools, it becomes an issue as far as being able to make a good, long-lasting effect.
I think another thing that really gets in the way is the speed of everything nowadays. Everybody wants everything faster and faster. A lot of the tools that we all use, whether we're in quality or in the manufacturing world, anything else, those tools haven't sped up as much as the speed of expectations by customers, by developers, by management. So I think that can really cloud some of the quality aspects as well. Just things happen faster than the technology can keep up with it. When you're measuring parts, when we're running parts where I work, 90 parts a minute, and customer expects us to hand inspect every one of those parts. It's not designed for that. We can't do that. We don't pretend to do that, but the expectation is everything has to be perfect. So the challenge is developing those tools and techniques and keeping current so that we can keep up with the speed of everything. And I'm not just talking about speed within a factory, but the speed of everything else. Brian faces the speed of recovery and the speed of new technologies in hospitals, and we all face those challenges. So I think that's something that can really get in the way, is sometimes you just have to slow down and look at what you're doing rather than just bulling ahead to get it done, check it off the list, and go on to the next one.
I'll chime in here a little bit as well. When that need for speed happens and the expectation of instant results, what I see happening on occasion is that the traditional tools take time. You have to do analysis, you have to gather data. All those things take time. And many times there's this drive to come up with the 15-minute fix-it. Quality is looked on.
Why does it take that long?
Well, exactly. Well, even that long, sometimes too much. So we're kind of expect to be like Harry Potter. You whip the magic pen out and poof, it's fixed. And there's, because of the ingrained cultural, everything happens click, 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 with the magic phones and all that stuff. We end up kind of up against a wall as quality professionals when you want to take the time to do a good job and run the numbers and check them twice and be sure that you're marking down the right path. You get in a little bit of heat and trouble. The other thing that I think is kind of related is when you have the push and shove, it's really important as a quality professional when something goes wrong. Much as they hate you because you're always pointing out what's wrong, when there's a crisis, you're in a spot. How'd that happen? Why did you let it happen? Somebody else made a mistake, but still somehow the quality guy's fault. And then if it gets solved, yeah, you're a hero. But the other flip of that coin is prevention. And sometimes that's not given as much emphasis or respect in the profession. It may on our side of the fence, but certainly my experience in manufacturing, management, and operations don't necessarily look as favorable upon the guy who spends time preventing something, because they're just off doing time-wasting activities, of course. And they could be fixing something, so.
There's also an old but true adage that says that quality is a journey, not a destination. And so, as quality professionals, I think that there are things that are improved, progress is made, but every time you do that, the bar gets raised. And it really does. In the automotive sector, tolerances just keep getting tighter. What used to be world class is no longer world class. So it's a continual journey in terms of quality.
If you think about all the things these guys have been talking about, they kind of roll up into one big adage for me. I just sat here thinking about it and going, many of the things that they just said revolve around the fact that we as quality professionals have to be excellent communicators and listeners. If you can't hear what your customer's telling you, you'll never make it better. If you can't let folks know in a reasonable and accurate way what needs to be done in order to solve a problem, it will never get solved. I think that you'll hear that tonight a couple of times up here, and I think it's important to realize that as quality professionals, we all have to be able to sit up front, talk to folks straight in the face, and tell them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not.
I knew this one would get us going. So, also, as you've heard us say, I know some of you are in the manufacturing track, lean thinking, push-pull. In our day, our earlier days in our career, you know, you could go out and construct your data gathering efforts, and you could go out and pull that data for analysis. Nowadays, there's so much data being pushed as well, just pushed back at you once you launch anything through any of these applications out there. So the analytics are coming back quicker than sometimes you can even construct your survey or want to construct your survey. And nowadays you have to be ready to answer leadership's questions that come out of that. So prevention was mentioned here during our dialogue. Same thing, if you can influence the construct of that software, those mathematical equations being used to pull that data and report on it, it can go a long way before people are off chasing ghosts and applying resources to look down for solutions for something that might not really be a problem. So again, speed both ways is now coming so fast. Just look at our healthcare insurance interchanges that launched last week. Everyone asked with all the planning, why did it crash and not just take off so well? It was supposed to be like booking a trip on Expedia. It didn't work that way yet.
You know, we're kind of beating up the quality profession right now, and it's not all doom and gloom, and there are a lot of challenges out there. But the biggest challenge I think we all face is the challenge to try to solve a problem. And there's nothing, in all honesty, there's nothing better than solving an ongoing problem once and for all. So in spite of all the doom and gloom we're talking about, when you can identify the root cause of an issue, whether it's a part issue or a service issue, whatever it is, when you identify it and you can help put corrective action in place, and all of a sudden this problem that's been on your charts up here is now way down there, there's really nothing better than that. And we've all seen those in our careers, and hopefully you will too. But overcoming these challenges is really one of the biggest challenges and one of the most rewarding challenges I think that any of us can do.
All right, thank you. What type of education have you received, and what role has education played in your career? Hopefully you weren't all English majors.
I'll grab this one. My formal training, formal education is in, believe it or not, wildlife biology. So working with the animals that I've worked with my entire career, these guys up here, it's really helped. No, seriously, I come to quality from a scientific background, and there's other ways to get into quality. There's administrative type activities. There's other facets of quality besides the scientific or the mathematical ones. That's where my career has been as a quality engineer and a black belt and master black belt and all that. It's been the science end of it. But again, there's a lot of other ways to get into quality. The Baldrige and the ISO stuff, the administrative stuff, the management stuff, that's all equally important, and that's really what makes a well-rounded quality professional, someone that can delve into all those aspects. So regardless of what your formal education is in, keep growing and keep looking outside of your own field to try to learn other areas, to learn the business end of quality. That's something that one of my mentors over the years has really taught me. Learn the business of quality. It's not just measuring parts or inspecting parts or saying parts are good or bad, but understand the business and how you can impact the business by making wise quality decisions. So the education and the training you get will all help you become more well-rounded. But with that said, keep going forward, keep learning, and you can be a very good quality professional.
I got into the field probably in the more traditional way through engineering, and specifically things like industrial engineering. And engineering is basically problem solving. It's learning how to gather information, sort out what's important, and apply models and things to understand what's going on. And I think that background, problem solving, that's why employers need to hire people. They need people that can come in and solve problems. They don't need people to just gather information. They need people that can figure things out. And So it was a more traditional background, but I think it's important to have a wide background. For instance, we all know the stereotype, you can have engineers that are very good at doing problems, but they can't communicate with people. And in quality and working with people on the floor, you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to write things, so you need to have some good English language arts skills. So it's a variety of things, but I'd say problem solving is what's the most important.
I'm probably the only one up here. I look around, I'm probably the only one up here that doesn't have a formal degree. I got my job because my job was eliminated. And they said, well, let's put him in the quality department. And I went, okay, what's that? And I began taking courses right here at community college. No offense to you Ferris guys. And I did something that none of the other guys who took the courses did. I took them back and I applied what I learned at work. If you're going to learn something, for goodness sakes, use what you learn. And that has kept me in good standing for a good long time. I have since have achieved certifications through the American Society for Quality, as both a certified quality manager, quality engineer, and a couple of others. And that has kept me employed. I believe that it's important to apply the knowledge that you learn, and I believe it's important to seek certifications in your professional organizations. I'm pushing that just because I work at ASQ, but that's all right too. I think all the guys up here carry some sort of certification through ASQ, and that's been a good thing for me. But you don't have, it doesn't all have to be formal, but it has to be applied.
I'm a little less traditional. My background as a pre-med chemistry major, and back when I was in my mid-20s, even 4.0 GPA guys were not getting into medical school. So I looked ahead and said, how much money do I have, and when's it gonna run out? Get me out of here, please. My actual degree is in scientific and technical communications. That's one of those liberal artsy kind of things. But because of the chemistry background, I know the numbers, science, you know, the stats and heavy duty science stuff. So that combination for me has worked out really well. The communication, as mentioned earlier, is really, really important. And I have found myself able to be the problem guy, understand what's going on, help fix things, and also be able to communicate what's needed, procedural. A lot of times I got to get called on to do the flow charting and make procedures because that's what I got my degree in, right? But it's worked out really well for me, but it really comes down to that basic desire to use the skills you have, to build new skills, and get things fixed.
Want to go right down the line?
Yeah, there we go. I think it was Emerson that said that experience is what some people call mistakes. And basically, Jim talked about it, about application. And be able to go out and actually experience what's going on within your work environment. The guys talked about communication skills being very important within the quality profession. And also looking at some analytical skills, whether it be business-related analytics or whether it be mathematical analytics, ends up being a benefit, but those aren't those driving factors. Being able to be personable with the other people that you work with is probably one of the biggest things as far as succeeding within the profession. The other is watch what's going on around you, because, you know, I try to learn from everybody else's mistakes because I don't have enough time in order to make them all myself. And just write those things all down so that when you need to be able to apply it, you've got that reference. Another good thing is being able to be a storyteller, because that seems to be the way that people listen to you.
Kind of summarize all around it. My background, I came out with a BS degree in industrial distribution back in my day, and they since modernized it to an interdisciplinary management and engineering title. Sounds a lot better than industrial distribution. but it was management and watered down engineering. And then when I was working in Texas, I went back to night school when I was a quality manager and picked up an MBA from the University of Texas. Everyone here has said it. I think most importantly, after that formal learning is fine, sounds great, looks good on a business card, looks fancy. I don't hang diplomas up in the office; they're still in the basement. That doesn't wow me. I'd rather talk with someone who knows problem solving. Several of my best team members are non-degreed individuals in a past life that I would put on any team because they know how to see, they know how to understand, they're very analytical, they know how to get data that's appropriate and apply it to the situation. Conversely, I've run into more than a few degreed engineers that have trouble communicating in a common language and have trouble getting out of techno speak, and they don't really see the problem. So it varies. It varies to the application. But Jim has also said it, that what's helped me in my career professionally has been ASQ certifications. I mean, when I was in Texas at that job, I got a hold of a Ford Motor Company book, Supplier Quality Manual, and I read the stuff on control charting. Took me 3 months. I read that manual 3 times at home on my time, self-directed learning, to understand what a control chart was, because the company wasn't giving training and quality tools. And you have to persevere, you have to want things, you have to want to, again, lifelong learning. I'm still learning. I'm still learning every month as I go on, trying to apply skills and to remain relevant. The older I seem to get, the more you want to stay relevant, and you do want to be relevant. But problem-solving skills come through. Problem-solving and communication, people skills.
How have you ensured sustainment of quality improvements in your position? What's important in order to sustain quality improvements?
I think one of the big keys from where I sit is to institutionalize whatever it is that has resolved the situation. And by that I mean standard work, procedures, SOPs, whatever you want to call them, that we define the expected new behavior that cures the problem. We follow up to make sure that behavior stays there, things are being done the way they should be done now, and that we have the discipline to keep doing those things, even when it may not be convenient. It may take, another 28 seconds in tech time to do those things that cured the problem, and then a year from now, someone has a bright idea to make things faster, quicker, cheaper, and pull out the things that prevented the problem we had 2 years ago. So.
I'll just chime in. Exactly, standard work, audit for sustainment. I like the standard work that, again, it should be relevant. Organizations are full of procedure manuals. They're collecting dust, and today it doesn't have to be a manual. A 3-ring binder, it can be a file, electronic file, but people feel like they have to have those things, but many times you'll start to audit those, and you'll find they get dated. They need to be dynamic. So I like the posted standard work that's at the spot of use, or GEMBA, we'll throw out all these terms again, and make sure they are relevant, because the other thing going with that standard work is that change control. Change is okay, but there needs to be some control to it. Otherwise, we revert back to the land of chaos, and then we don't know who's changing what and what the input or what factor is affecting the output, as much if it's just random changing that's not controlled. So controlling changes along with that standard work.
One of my sayings that people quote is, I define discipline as doing the right thing consistently. So what we're talking about as far as standard work is one piece as far as sustainability is concerned. For me, the other thing is what I call tribal knowledge. And within our process that we have for corrective action includes lessons learned. And that's a separate database that after we've formed a team, they've worked on a problem, they've corrected the problem, before they can close that, one of the items that they need to do is identify what are the lessons that we learned from this. And it may be as far as the process that we were working with, or it might be the product that we were working with that they had a lesson learned from, or how we manufactured it, or It may end up being, what did we learn about working together as a team? What could we have done better as a team? That goes into a database, and what we do is part of that discipline that we have with our engineers is with new programs. One of their tasks is to go back to that lessons learned database and take a look at it to see what kind of mistakes we made in the past or what adjustments we made in the past so that we can implement those into our future products.
In the automotive industry, a big thing in terms of sustaining quality is auditing. One of the techniques is called layered process audits, where supervisory level people do audits every day. Their managers then will do audits every week. Their managers will do audits every month. And even the top person at the facility is required to do audits every week. And the audits are not just standardized work, but the whole range of things, from looking at housekeeping to looking at standardized work to looking at our things completed, our tests being done, our first piece checks being done, all of the things that you need to successfully operate a shop floor. But audits, just in general, I'm sure most of you in your classes have heard of ISO 9001, or the automotive version, which is TS 16949. Now that's a requirement of doing business. If you're going to supply as a tier 1 supplier the automotive plants, you have to be certified in that standard. And those requirements are satisfied through audits, external auditors. In addition, Ford has a MSA, Manufacturing Site Assessment. GM has something they call now QSB Plus, Quality Systems Basics. The plus is because they've added additional things for maintenance and logistics. But it's constantly looking at things that are going on in your plant and seeing if they are really being maintained. And then taking audit results and charting those, and then audit results aren't just done at the time, but then they're reviewed by upper management to see if the progress that's been made is being sustained.
One of the things that I like to do, to see if I'm maintaining improvements, is to make sure that I've established a baseline. If you don't know where you started, how do you know if you're making it any better? The other thing is that you want to put measures in place to sustain that in terms of auditing, in terms of other things, and make those visible, because you're going to find that what gets measured gets better.
Andrea, do you want to answer all the questions that you missed?
Sure, give them to me in order. So I'm so sorry I'm late. My name is Andrea Ward. And actually, it was funny that I happened to come in on this one because I was thinking about this one earlier. And so in terms of sustaining improvements, that's what we're talking about. I've worked several places where they have done, say, plant consolidation, and in every case, they have lost something. They've stopped doing audits, they've stopped doing checks, they've let themselves slide. It is so easy to say, oh, we didn't anticipate this, now we're gonna miss a shipment, and to give up quality so that, or your checks or your maintenance or whatever it is, so that you don't shut down the customer. And that's something where I would encourage everybody, you have to stand up and be the voice for quality and say, how are we gonna maintain this while we're doing this consolidation or while we're doing this move? Let's make sure we've planned everything out, because like I said, I've worked a couple of different places where the consolidation has almost killed the business. And they've, in some cases, had to revert back to going to multiple sites or spreading things out, so.
What effect has technology had on quality improvement efforts?
I'll start again, kind of to my earlier answer about even data feedback or data being pushed back to you. And technology does a couple of things. Again, measurements become more discrete. You can get more sensitivity out of what you're measuring. So therefore, you can get down to smaller and smaller units of measure if they're appropriate, you know. Again, you'll learn there's an appropriate level where you have to stop at some point in time too if there's not, it doesn't have impact on the output. You could have an academic study forever, but if it's not bringing any value to the customer or value to the end user, it's just that, it's an academic study, and unless you're pulling in grants for that type of work, again, you gotta know when to stop. That's that a little common sense and a little bit of knowing your business and knowing where you're heading strategically within your organization. So technology has been a boon. It's a boon and a bane, because the information overloads part of it is now where so much is coming back through algorithms and whatever else is out there through the smartphone apps. Just the data feedback is incredible today.
How many of you guys on Twitter? Did you know that the government has control of every single tweet that you ever did? Say that. This is true.
Not the NSA.
One of those pieces, and part of my profession right now, what we're doing within particular area that I work is in warranty. And there's people that are using that technology in order to mine that information to look at, you know, what are people complaining about as far as their new car is concerned. Going in and looking at what type of trends that people are doing as far as overall with the automotive industry as far as vehicles are concerned. Because we end up with crazy things like, you know, the guys go out and buy a car and then they trick it out and then something happens and then they got to put it all back together again so they can take it to the dealer to get the warranty repair done on it. So part of technology now is allowing for, like what Brian said, being able to mine that information. It used to be when you were looking at customer surveys, you know, you had to sit down and figure out what questions you could use and use a Likert scale in order to be able to put it together and then send it out and distribute it and decide what customers you're going to send it to. And it was a long, tedious process. You know, there's companies out there now that I've used that I go down and put together some basic pieces of information that I'm looking for. They'll actually design the survey to make sure that it's not skewed. And they've already got a full database of people that were willing to take those surveys and be able to give me back results. Those are the things that technology now is helping as far as the profession and with continual improvement is concerned.
It goes back to almost, it's black box technology. I mean, it just for concrete examples, it's right down to things like a water filtration system today. The chips, smart chips are getting so cheap to be integrated into manufacturing that you can, you're putting components in these devices that when they're new and when they're first engaged and first powered up, they'll read to the memory chip that, hey, I've had a filter replacement, it's from this lot code in the manufacturing plant, here's my date in service, and here's how many liters of water went through it. So that when that user calls to say, hey, I need a new $100 water filter, I've only had it a month, they can read that device through a phone line and say, no, you've had that filter 8 months, and you know, you've put 150 liters through it or 1,000 liters, and we're not going to honor that warranty. So smart box technology and smart chips.
Tell them what you told me a few weeks ago about the pills.
Oh, you probably read about all this. So technology in the medical field. Again, smart chip or nanotechnology, where there is an outfit in California now, they can put a tag on your pill and for compliance that if you take that medication or pill, it will, your stomach acid activates the circuitry, and then it will send a device to your wireless device, which can send that to your PCP to ensure that you're being compliant and taking your meds. So the world is changing very fast. Sorry, someone else was coming in.
I was just gonna say, technology has made things easier, it's made things harder, but overall, it's led to improvement. It's made things easier because some of the things, starting out, control charting, people used to have to do those manually and it was painful. Now, everything's just put in a computer and it will tell you when there are cases where you have to take actions. It's made things harder in the sense that there is more information. You do have to sort things out. You have to pay attention. It's led to improvement because the information can be used to drive improvement processes. The information that's out there is a lot more than what there used to be.
The good news is there aren't many things that you can't get either a computer or a device to do for you or tell you. The bad news is you still have to take these classes to try and figure out what it's telling you. It still takes a human to interpret whatever it's giving you. So far, they haven't been able to come up with everything like that yet. So there's good and bad to it. Technology gives you lots of opportunity, but you still have to interpret what the technology is doing
And check to make sure it's accurate.
and check to make sure it's accurate.
If you can indulge me to tell a story, back in the 80s, across the parking lot, I used to teach an applied statistics class at night school. And at that time, I was teaching students how to calculate square root longhand. Now, you guys all know how to do that, right?
I do.
No? Well, calculators were just coming out at the time, and I always ended up with students that would say, why do we have to learn how to do this? And every new class, I'd say, okay, all I want you guys to do is I want you to push the number 9, and I want you to push the square root. Now, at that time, a lot of the calculators, square root was a second function of the squared key. You had to push the yellow button and then push the squared key. And then I'd ask them, okay, how many of you guys got 81? And I would end up with anywhere between 20 and 30% of the class raising their hand. The secret is that, and my response then was, that's the reason why you need to learn how to calculate square root, is so that you know what that computer is telling you. When you're looking at the information, is it realistic as far as the information that is giving back? Because I run into, on a weekly basis, where I give odd change to a cashier and they look at me and tell me that I gave them too much because I wanted a quarter back instead of a dime, a nickel, and 4 pennies. So it's one of those things to where you've got to look at it. Technology is great, as they were talking about. We can do great things with it because it gives us more information, but by the same token, we need to know what kind of information that we're getting.
All right, thanks. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Yeah.
What would you say now is the standard, like, requirement to become what you guys are qualified to do as far as education? Like, do you need minimum, like, a bachelor's to get in that field now, or do you even not even have a chance unless you get like a master's to really be looked at in today's economy as far as qualifying goes?
All right, I'll repeat the
Okay.
question for our group here. Gentlemen would like to know what type of education, what level would be required to get into a similar quality profession as you are in?
It really depends on where in the quality field. Where I work, in order to start as a quality engineer, they'd like you to have experience. We won't hire anybody that doesn't have it. Our current requirement is that you have to have at minimum a bachelor's degree, and they prefer an engineering degree. But you don't have to start out as a quality engineer. There's a lot of opportunity to start out as technicians where you can really learn. It really, I mean, in terms of advancement, it's a lot easier if you do have a degree. They assume that you've demonstrated a certain amount of ability to learn and how to problem solve. But I think a lot of people have, probably at the table, have moved up and haven't started out right in a position. So I don't know if anybody else wants to address it, but I mean, that's what we're finding.
Yeah, we're in the process right now of hiring a quality engineer, and a bachelor's degree is really kind of a minimum anymore. Again, there's other ways to get there, as Andrea just said, but a bachelor's degree, and someone mentioned earlier about ASQ certification as a quality engineer or a quality auditor or any number of other certifications are great tools to help you along the way. In the particular job I'm looking to fill right now as a quality engineer, it's a bachelor's degree. And if they don't have a bachelor's, but they have ASQ certification as a quality engineer, quality auditor, that would replace about 2 years of formal education. So an associate's in certification would be a minimum starting point for where I'm looking for. But I think Andrea said it earlier, a bachelor's degree is really the place to get started, and then you can grow your skill set from there with certifications, with further education, and more training, more on-the-job training.
How many of you are working today? How many of you are working students? How many of you have quality professionals in your organizations? I think that's a good place for you to start, to let them know, one, you're taking these courses, two, I'm interested in becoming a quality professional. The company that I used to work for, it's no secret, I worked at Steelcase for a long time, but Steelcase allowed me to, one, work as a quality professional, and two, gave me the opportunity to take the courses that I needed and actually paid for them through benefits that they had to achieve the goals that I had set. And you can do that even today. Our company is looking for a quality engineer, and it's best to have a bachelor's. That's what they're looking for. But there are other opportunities for you to get in at what I'm going to call an entry level and work your way up. That's not a bad way. Many times people are looking for someone, how do I say that? Someone who's not book smart, but real smart, that you can do the things that you say you can do, not just, okay, I've got something hanging on the wall. That doesn't tell me anything about you. And if you can demonstrate those skills at work today and ask them to help you become more than what you are today, more power to you.
As I mentioned earlier, when I said I had a few individuals in my career that I worked with that had no post-secondary education, but I would put on any team. I'd put them on any team today. If you're in an organization, volunteer or step out, get on some problem-solving teams, get some of that experience. In one case I pushed very hard. I campaigned and went to the mat for an individual and got him into a quality engineering position without the advanced degree, because the person had developed all the skill sets without that certification or accreditation. Because as I say, there's a lot of us out here. I could have all kinds of spaghetti after the name, but I might not know how to do anything if I'm just purely academic. So again, you start to know your environment. How many in like manufacturing tracks or school track? How many in the room today had been exposed to like A3 problem solving or A3 thinking in lean areas? So I would say, that's today's hot topic or buzzword, is everybody's doing A3 lean problem solving. So if you have a chance to look up or find out a little more, or Google out there some A3 problem solving, you'll start to see, start to get into some of that. Again, it's the analytics that come back if you're a good common sense problem solver.
And by the way, problem solving is not just unique to the quality profession. If you're a good problem solver and you're in manufacturing management, or if you're a good problem solver and you're working in a hospital, that's a tool or a skill that applies across almost any one of the professions. It's what doctors learn how to do when they're going to school, is they're learning about different types of diseases, different types of symptoms, the cause and the effect that go along with it, and then they're doing the immediate problem solving with the patient.
Again, walking our talk, I mean, what was I doing with my time before tonight's presentation is I brought some light reading. It's a national strategy for quality improvement in healthcare put out by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So again, you do have to have a desire to want to continue to learn about the profession you're in. I've only been in healthcare 4.5 years, but boy, have I learned a lot about healthcare in 4.5 years.
One other thing is, as I look down this table, I think everybody at this table has been involved in the local ASQ section, and everybody at this table has been formally involved on the section leadership committee, and many of the people at this table have been chair of the local section. So that's another way to get around and learn what you need to know by mingling with your peers. Networking is through ASQ. I've been a member for almost 30 years. I'm sure other people have been a member for that long or more. That's where I think most of us met each other. That networking has been huge. Most of us have worked together. We've been on ASQ together. Networking is huge. That's where you learn what you really need to know to move ahead in some of these organizations.
Any other questions? Yes.
How do your companies promote a culture of continuous improvement?
Okay, so the question is how do your companies promote a culture of quality improvement?
Okay, so this actually is a well-timed question. I work for Johnson Controls, and this happens to be Continuous Improvement Awareness Month, in the month of October. So it's actually an annual thing. They have a strategy where they try to bake continuous improvement into everything. So they're continually measuring how do we benchmark against other people who make the same commodity that we do within our organization, without our organization. It comes from the top in our organization, and I think it really has to be driven from the top. It's, in terms of continuous improvement, probably one of the most organized places that I've ever worked. A lot of places drive things from a plant level. We actually just had our Vice President of Continuous Improvement and Quality, it's the same person, come in and speak to us because the particular location I'm at has made such dramatic improvement in this calendar year. And so because of that, he came in to talk about, hey, you guys are really doing a good job, you're doing the right things. And it's all based on how we're measured against the other locations that make similar products. So.
How many of you here know what fenestration is? Cool. I work in the fenestration industry. That's a little unusual word. I'll teach you something tonight. We build windows where I work. I work at a company called ODL in Zeeland, and we drive continuous improvement, as Andrea said, from the top down, but we also take a look at it from, it doesn't just have to be manufacturing. Last week, they did a Kaizen in our accounting department. It used to take them 8 days to close the books at the end of the month. They went through a continuous improvement Kaizen, sat down, mapped it all out, took a look at what the baseline was and where they wanted to be. This past month was the first month they've ever closed the books in less than 6 days, 5 days, and that was a huge improvement for them. So there are opportunities not only in a manufacturing realm. I had the pleasure of meeting Brian's boss's boss, who happens to be the Vice President of Continuous Improvement at Spectrum Health. Holy cow, it's everywhere, and there's excellent opportunities to get in there, so I encourage you to do that.
My particular company, we thought we don't have the quality month, but we're measuring continual improvement, those types of things. But one of the other things that we actually have is that's part of everyone's performance evaluation, is a reminder of one, and then also where that contribution is at. That's how people are scored as far as where their contribution is at. And it's not the big bang stuff or the big buck stuff that is really looked for. What it is the involvement. As far as being able to look around, look and see what's around you and what can be done better.
A couple more points. Again, based on your level of maturity within your organization, you want one of two things. When you're in the early stages, your customers or your patients, they're going to tell you how well you're doing or not doing. And that's going to be so evident that that's going to get leadership attention. Now, if you've got a well-oiled machine and you're doing well, now you start looking for those internal improvements and efficiencies and other things that you can get out to improve profit margin or whatever it would be. I know in healthcare we say a lot, you know, we do have to make some money, even if you're not a not-for-profit. No margin, no mission. You know, and if you're all about healing people, you still have to make some money to be able to do that and to be able to give back to the community. So when you are, again, a little further along in maturity, you start to look internal. You then can look into accounting practices or your shipping practices, but your customers or your patients, they're going to also let you know, and it's an indication of how well you're doing, and they'll force you into some continuous improvement activity.
In the automotive industry, we have quality operating system meetings, and generally those are monthly. And it's not just covering things in the quality department, although that is covered. It's not just parts per million and customer concerns and that kind of stuff. It covers everything from safety, environmental. Each department will list how they're doing in terms of parts per million, or how their FTC, first time capacity is. They'll go through and with A3s show what projects they're working on, what are your top defects, what are your top problems. So those things in most businesses are monitored and reviewed, and that information then gets consolidated and goes on somebody else's chart that's presented even higher up the organization.
One thing we've done at Steelcase is I think done a really good job of starting out our annual planning and cascading those measures and goals downward. And so there's a direct link between the corporate goals all the way down the chain to my personal annual performance plan. There are number goals for defect reduction, DPPM numbers, so forth. And all that, those things again are tied directly from my individual to my department to operations and all the way up to the top. But interesting thing we learned, we've been doing this for a number of years now, is a couple years ago, it dawned on us that we were creating kind of a us and them situation with some of those goals, and it was actually kind of comical to sit back and watch the manufacturing plants take their defect complaints and try and figure out how to code them to somebody else's bucket, right? It was a marketing issue. It was some special engineering thing. It was anywhere but ours because we got measured on our stuff. And so after a couple of years of that, the light bulb kind of popped up there, and we don't have we and them goals anymore. So the plant manager and the operations manager in each plant and all the way down in that level, they're responsible for the things they make, whether it's manufacturing related problems, marketing, bad spec guide information, could be somebody called the hotline and had a question and got the wrong answer. Doesn't make a difference. There's no our bucket and your bucket. It's all of ours bucket. And at that level, for those kind of things, we're all rated on the same set of numbers. So there's no benefit in passing the buck, and there is benefit in pitching in to solve a problem because we all win. So other than that, ditto for what these other folks have said.
Yeah, you can spend more time with that game playing trying to reallocate causes than actually work on a problem and get something done. So,
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, how does your organization search for defects, and when defects arise, how do you focus on reducing those defects?
So how do you find defects, and once you find them, how do you focus on eliminating them?
I'll tell you how not to. I'm responsible for taking a look at customer credits. People who got our product and didn't like it and wanted their money back. That's the last place you want to look for problems, because that's the first place it'll hit you, is right in the pocketbook. Ideally, if you're going to look for problems, you want to take a look at them in the product development process. What could go wrong, and do a really good job of doing your design FEMAs and your process FEMAs up front. That will, any money spent in prevention saves you 10 times that in customer disloyalty or customer dissatisfaction. So anything you can do to prevent the problem in the first place and identify it before it even happens is probably the best opportunity. I can tell you that in the organization that I work for, we have check stations and inspection processes that we go through, and we find many of our defects there. Every day at 3 o'clock, there's a team meeting with the team leader, an engineer, a quality engineer, a department manager, and sometimes the plant manager or vice president, and they'll discuss what happened that day in order to make it better, whether it's uptime, downtime, loss reduction because of employees being ill, anything from holy cow, that didn't look the way I thought it should, to how come you broke 6 of them in a row. So there's all kinds of things that go on, but those are addressed daily in our organization right at the line where the guys are, and they measure them daily and mark it up right on board where they keep it visible. I think that's a good important process too, is to keep things visible. Again, if you keep it visible and you measure it, it gets better.
Yeah, from the healthcare side, we have multiple channels, different modes coming in. You've got patient feedback, customer satisfaction. You've got other measures that now again, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare are involved with. 30-day readmission rates, hospital-acquired infections would be a defective. All this data, here comes more of these data streams. They're being control charted. I mean, they're being reported upon. There are initiatives called value-based purchasing. That there's withhold by the CMS, or withholding up to 2% of your revenue for payment, and at year end, it's either you get reimbursed some of that withhold or you've lost it based on meeting quality metrics. Incident reporting, near miss incidents, sentinel events, something that might lead up to a death, patient death. I mean, all sorts of information, but people would be surprised to learn that there is control charting going on in the hospital setting. As well as rolling out standard work and the same type feedback for the primary care physician's office in our clinical practices. So internal medicine, family medicine, and/or specialty, pediatric specialty. These offices now have daily huddles to talk about what went right or wrong the day before, what's going to happen on today's patient panel coming in. So it's a look back, look ahead, and then it is the feedback loops. Hope that wasn't too much.
Okay, there's another young man back here.
Well, I work at Spectrum Health, and I know we're really big on patient satisfaction and process improvement, and that's very transparent throughout the organization. And during one of our meetings, I found out that we also receive government incentives for making sure that we're doing quality and patient gathering vital signs and data like that. So I'm just wondering, in your businesses, is there any government incentives that you get for quality, or is there a regulation that affects your job providing quality for the organization?
So, I guess in a nutshell, how does the government influence quality programs outside of healthcare?
The company I work for manufactures thermoform packaging, and the government could care less about thermoform packaging because all it does is something to get something from the store to someone's house and they throw it away. But really fast-growing part of our business is food packaging. That's a whole different animal. Not only does it have to get product from here to there, it has to get it there in a safe, in a clean, in a sanitary manner. We are, at this point, we're relatively new in the food business. We're pursuing safe quality food certification, which is like ISO, only for food, or TS or anything like that. But also one of the things we're looking at is, at what point does our company need to be FDA registered, which means a whole bunch of things, and none of them are really good. It's not good as long as we're doing our job right. It becomes good probably if we do something wrong and they're government and they're here to help. But that's really something we're looking at is what impact will the government have on our business as we go more and more into food and maybe pharmaceutical packaging down the road? What role will the government play? We don't know the answer to that yet. Most places that handle food or handle pharmaceuticals have pretty strict requirements, and they're pretty above board. In the packaging arena, it's a little bit different because we're kind of an afterthought. With that said, with all the food recalls and everything else going on, it is going to become more important, and we're struggling with how do we manage through that. So I don't have the answer, but your question's pretty relevant. It's going to become much more important, at least for us.
Just to add a little bit to what Mike was saying, I actually worked in the food industry for a couple of years. I'm back in automotive now. But as far as packaging, packaging is considered an ingredient, the way that they treat it. So they actually keep it covered just like they would keep any kind of food covered. They treat it like it's part of the ingredients list. But besides that, and he's right about that. And the food industry in particular has the FDA to come in. They've got the safe quality food. They're very concerned about contamination. They test the equipment after they clean it to make sure they haven't left allergens behind. A lot of it is government driven. Back in automotive, there are some things that are government driven. I used to be in making fuel injectors. Fuel injectors are part of the fuel handling system, so they worry about emissions. Is anybody here, or I don't know if any of you are familiar with FMEA, failure modes and effects analysis at all? No? Okay. So it's something that we use particularly in automotive, to go through and look at what can go wrong. They usually start out with a design, and then we'll look at eventually what can go wrong in the process that will affect the design. But we rate severity, and the highest severity things are either things that will cause a safety issue or things that will cause you to not be compliant to some kind of government regulation. So they don't tell us necessarily how to run our business, but they say these are the standards that you have to meet, and then you have to prove that you can meet them.
In our plant, the parts we make, front-end systems and so on, and hitches for vehicles, for truck hitches and so on, we have to have certain tests performed to make sure that they're strong and that our welds are correct and that it can pass the National Transportation Safety Organization tests. There are requirements for lighting and things. But most manufacturing companies also have government involvement and things just with OSHA, the Occupational Safety Association, and with the EPA and other ways that we have to meet compliance requirements.
I liked your question because it gives me an opportunity to say something that it's not just the federal government that has requirements. In our industry, fenestration, window industry, we have to take a look and say, what are some of the local requirements in the building codes? So there are things that go on behind the scenes that you don't know about up front as an employee there or as a customer. We sell product in Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has a specific requirement that says any of your frames have to meet this requirement, and oh, by the way, it has to burn at this rate and give this much smoke off. Hello? Then I get this call from a county in just north of Atlanta, Georgia, where the guy can't install the bath window because it's at a level where somebody can walk next to it. And their local building code says that if a window is this large, it has to have a protective device against it. We had to sell them 2 small windows in order to get rid of that big one. And they had to redesign their house just to meet their requirements. So it's kind of it's interesting that it's not just federal regulations that have to be met. It depends on where you're working and how your working industry is.
Very similar in furniture. There are a lot of those hidden insidious little government intrusions. And so we deal with the local building and codes inspectors and electrical unions and. So if we have to deal with a lot of things, most people don't know that in certain states and certain cities, the kind of chair you sit in is regulated by law, and it has to have certain burn rate characteristics and a minimum or actually maximum smoke generation and things like that, otherwise just plain not allowed. You can't buy a chair and bring it into the greater Boston area without it meeting a huge amount of testing, special versions that we make for certain cities. It's one size fits all at that point, because we hit the highest mark and then sell that to whoever needs those. But a lot of little things that add up to drive people crazy, you know, and when you don't realize it. You know, like I say, you have electrical issues, you have seismic issues, furniture, right? Some things get kind of tall, the wall panels, Dilbert stuff. Earthquake comes along, it might fall down and squash somebody, right? So that they have laws in certain areas where they're prone to earthquakes that can't happen. Huge test, a lot of special devices that we put in place, even on top of the general structural testing that has to be passed, that makes sure that the thing can't walk itself and then flip over. So government's everywhere. If you know what rock to turn over, you'll find lots of bugs.
Continuing on the theme of not just the government, but also FMVSS in automotive, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. I did spend some time in automotive as well, but I'm surprised that Michael hasn't spoken up yet, because what's common in businesses today, a lot of it is warranty as a weapon. In the purchase order, the contract agreements, a certain level of warranty might be expected, or you might cost that out depending on if it's a new product, new technology, or there's a limit there. And above that if you can prove that was your sub-supplier fault, you cost transfer, and you get into those negotiations of, you have to take care of the field campaign, or you're going to eat this warranty, which is like the gun to the head to tell that sub-supplier that we really want your product launched under all this control and revision control we talked about. We want the reliability testing done. We want everything right to the control plan, because there's always that warranty as a weapon hanging out there that if you're not performing well, it's back to your customer is going to let you know.
Then on top of that, you need to anticipate what the requirements are going to be 5 years from now. The latest Chrysler recall that they did with the Cherokees, those vehicles were all built to FMVSS standards at the time that they were manufactured back in 2001. 2005, they changed those standards and required that the fuel tank be protected. And so then the government came back and said, well, you've got all of these vehicles because of, you have an incident rate of fires when these vehicles get rear-ended that is higher than what we would expect to see, so you need to go out and retrofit all of these vehicles in order to protect them. So that's part of what's being driven down from the automotive manufacturers to the suppliers now, is that can you anticipate what's going to be the next level that they're going to be looking at? The other way that the federal government's gotten involved, and I get also with warranty, I'm also involved with safety, and some of our products are part of safety systems. And the government has actually had a great acronym that they created after the Firestone tire problem with Explorers. You guys probably don't know what that's about, but we had Explorers that were flipping over because the tires would blow out. And the government decided that they're going to control the warranty data that is done by the dealer, and say that once the dealer has inputted the information, you can't change it. You can't say that no, that's not really what the cause of that issue was. And if something happens where someone's seriously injured, or God forbid, someone gets killed because of a component that you manufacture, there's a whole list of different procedures that you need to go through, reporting up through the federal government because of that. So the government gets really involved. The rewards for reduced warranty costs are that you continue to do business, and now the OEMs are looking to, if my part was a cause of a recall, I'm responsible for that cost.
Any other questions? Yes, Joe?
In order to reduce or manage the amount of government intrusion in the next couple of years, from a quality perspective, what's the vision for the quality field to do better self-checks so that the government doesn't feel compelled to come in and have to do it for you? Is there a 5 or 10-year vision of what quality is doing?
So the question is what is quality doing to self-regulate itself to keep government out of their professions?
First, it's not the profession that the government is getting into. It's the particular industries that the government is getting into. And without sounding politically motivated, the government believes that they need to protect us. I get involved with safety regulations that are tied in Washington with different products. This past year, after 4 years, the government has finally passed through FMVSS that hybrid vehicles that use something with a gasoline engine or maybe an all-electric car need to make noise. And that not only do they need to make noise, each manufacturer needs to have a different sound. So that if someone is visually impaired, they know that there is a hybrid vehicle around them. And if they did get hit, they'd know that they, not necessarily do they have to memorize who makes what sound, but if they said if it sounded like a low bell, the police officer can say, okay, that was a Toyota. But now what's going through the system is making it mandatory that all cars have rear view cameras. Doesn't matter what size the car is, doesn't matter what the design of the car is. They're currently in the second year of that particular discussion, but that will probably end up within the next 4 years. That will be a standard feature on all new vehicles. Now, going back to it, I remember back when if I wanted to have we used to call them a Cyclops eye, but they're called a center high mount stop lamp. But that third light that's in the back of the vehicle was something that somebody added on to their vehicle, or it was an option back in the early 1988. Not 58. Yeah, I know you couldn't resist. The other side of it is, safety belts were options back in the 1960s, as far as vehicles are concerned. So, long way around it, the government isn't mandating the profession so much as what it's mandating the industries.
I don't think that the goal for the quality professional today is to keep government out of anything at this point. I think it's, for me, as a quality professional, it's what can I do to provide the very best service, the very best quality, the very best acceptable product that my customer's willing to pay for. And if I can do that, I'm going to better society in some form or other, either at that level or a greater level. And for me, anything that I do as a quality professional that will better society will prevent the government from having to do more than they need to do. If I can impact one person so they don't have to depend on somebody else's regulation because they know that they don't have to, because I gave them something worthwhile that was worth their money and was worth their time and effort and gave them value, then I've accomplished what I need to accomplish.
I'll have a little fun with the technology piece to tie into Michael's comment about the cars, because they're too quiet. They are unsafe on the highway to a visually impaired person. Now we'll fast forward. Maybe if that visually impaired person's carrying a smartphone app and they know they've just encountered a sudden impact it would go into record mode and just read that VIN number off the vehicle that hit them and turn in a wireless police report and call for an ambulance at the same time to that location via GPS. So a little bit of fun with that. But seriously, also then, it's to get rid of some of the lobbyist influence, because why would the rear view mirrors be required? Because someone will spin the data. They'll spin the data about how many kids got hit in the driveway, and pretty soon they win, and every vehicle's got to have a rear view camera. And someone said it here before, government's role is trying to take care of all of us, cradle to grave. I don't know, I think we've done pretty good for several thousands of years, so we'll see.
And your explanation was probably a little bit more complicated than it needed to be,
Yes.
because Google's working on the driver's list car, so, you know, what story? But I think in terms of design, future trends, there are things that's designed for Six Sigma, using DFMEAs. The more you can do upfront thinking, you know, as has been said before, and build in quality, design in quality, the better job you'll do. And I think companies are doing that more and more.
I appreciate the clarification on that sound thing with the hybrid vehicles. I wondered why Jim Van Weeren had his head out the window on the way in the parking ramp making motorboat videos.
I drive a Prius, and it's kind of quiet.
Out of the way!
Exactly. Come in,
Move, you
come in.
idiot, move.
What do you enjoy most about your job? I'll give you an easy one now.
Talked a little earlier about the satisfaction of seeing problems fixed, but in my particular role, new product development, I have the opportunity to see products almost like a life cycle of a person, right? We have these little sparks of ideas that we get from market research or customer feedback or requests, and they gestate and they grow up, and the project gets established. We go through and do the work necessary to create a product and launch it. And it's almost, to me, and I'm kind of nuts, but it's almost like having kids. And so when I go to work every day, I've got all these little kids I'm working with, and eventually they grow up and they launch, and they go to market and people buy them, and you see them on television ads. There's a pizza company that does one. My wife thinks I'm crazy because I go, hey, that's my stuff, that's my stuff. You know, you can see different chairs and other products I've worked on in ads. But even right now, you're sitting in what was the very first product that I helped develop way back in 1981. My first product development product, this particular auditorium seating, and it's still alive, they're still in use, they're still being sold. And so it's kind of cool for me. That's my big thing, is like I can see the results of my labors as I travel around.
I can't believe you named your son after the Criterion chair.
Well, yeah.
Said were people smaller back then?
Yeah.
Do they not need desks to write on? And were there no left-handed people?
Actually, this product line has the flip-out trays, and they do come in right and left-handed, depending who played the order for this auditorium may not have been lefty-friendly.
But if you've ever been to the big house at U of M, you would probably want to shoot the either industrial engineer, whoever, like mark those bench seats, because I don't know whose buttocks are that tiny.
I used to go there. They
Get
make
that money
them.
in.
They make them smaller. They've done it a couple of times. They go, we can fit a few more.
Yep,
You know
we
what?
got a
That's how we get to
couple hundred thousand more in.
104,000, 110. We'll just make it
Customer
smaller.
demand.
18 inches, that's all you need, 18 inches.
You don't sit through most of it anyway. You stand.
Yeah.
Let's get real.
One of the neat things about being in quality is every day's something new. Yeah, there's a lot of the same old stuff that comes up, but you never know from one day to the next what you're going to be doing. One day you're at a supplier looking at some new type of raw material. The next day you could be at a customer looking at designing something new or resolving an issue they have. You could be working in a test lab one day. You just don't know. There's lots of different things to do. And to me, that's pretty important. I wouldn't want to go read the same reports every day or work on the same line every day. It wouldn't be for me. But to go in and, yeah, I kind of know what I'm going to do day to day, and you can kind of plan your day out a little bit. but things come up all the time to break that drudgery. So for me, that's one of the neat things. On the other hand, when you want to get something else done, that can be one of the downsides because you just can't focus on what you want to focus on, but always something new, and it's always something to learn.
Oh,
But-
that's fine.
No, ladies first.
All right, well, I have a similar experience where things are different every day, but I think what I enjoy the most is looking at, we supply directly to Ford, we're tier 1 to Ford, and looking at what was a problem product that had a lot of complaints, and I feel like I should knock on something, but we haven't had
Ryan said.
any, exactly, someone knock. We haven't had any complaints on this particular product that we were getting 3 and 4 a month, and we haven't had any new issues on it in more than a month, and knowing what went into that, like the level of education that we had to do with our operators, getting them to look at different things, making them aware of how what they do will have an impact on the product and will cause an issue with the customer if they don't do it right. All those things are different things I get to work on, but actually getting to see the result of that is really satisfying to say what I did mattered. And I think that all of us every day know that what we do matters, but sometimes you don't get to sit back and say, I actually can prove it. There are numbers that prove that what I did mattered. So.
I like Brian's analogy as far as the different products that he works with as kids, because I work with kids also, only they're disguised as adults. And for me, the best part is when people get it, as far as there's that aha moment when we're working on a problem or we're working on a scenario, whether it's component or whether it's a process problem or whether it's how do we get things tied together and do things better. But when that light bulb comes on, not an LED light, it's an incandescent, but what happens is that when it all fits together for them, that's really what makes my job worthwhile.
Mike Tappy said it as well. It's the variety of who you get to work with. Again, I put 35 plus years in manufacturing world before getting into healthcare. But today, totally different world for me. You know, I'm sitting down with surgeons, department chiefs and chairs, and nursing leadership. But the one thing they ask that you do come when you come to those meetings is you've done your homework and your research, because their time's very valuable. They won't suffer a fool like me too much. It's time to have fun, and then there's time to be real. And tonight I can have fun, but again, you go in those kind of meetings and you're with like a chief medical information officer and you're talking about electronic healthcare records. You want your research done. You want to show up prepared. It's not time to wing it. That's one thing I do learn. There's a difference, and I've always said that too. It's what's done me well over the years is always being real, always telling the truth, because the truth wins out in the end. I have seen careers end where people who were the gamesmanship, game players, you get by with it once or twice. You don't get by with it the third time when you're going to play games, when you're out problem solving and you need action taken. You want to come prepared. But it is fun most of the time.
I'll tell you that I love what I do. And I think you've heard some from my colleagues on the table tonight that you've heard the same thing. They like what they do. I love working with people. I like coming to places like this. I hope you're having as much fun as I am, because this is really a good event for me, and I like doing these things. I like the opportunity to, I think Michael just said it a minute ago, to watch when all of a sudden somebody gets what you're talking about. Their whole aura changes, and you can see it when you're in front of them. I like to show people something from a different perspective than where they are today. And I'm able to do that because that's part of my quality profession.
All right. There's a couple of questions on here about quality auditing. Talks about the traits that are important when you're working as a quality auditor, and also talks about why are things like objectivity and auditor independence important when you're working on internal auditing. So I know a lot of you have talked about, always tell the truth, and, that wins out, but can you talk a little bit more about importance of internal quality audits?
Michael wanted a double mic there.
Well, yeah. I am also the lead auditor for my company. I have auditors, ad hoc teams that go together. Talked about objectivity. Couple of things. First of all, when you're doing audits, you're doing it towards a standard. You're not doing it towards an opinion. It's not that I think you ought to do it this way. Whatever that standard or that baseline is for either the audit or the assessment, that's what you're evaluating, and being objective to what those requirements are and being able to document what you see. One of the parts of the question is the traits, very thick-skinned, because what happens is that not only what are you evaluating against the standard, you're evaluating your fellow employees. And basically, you're identifying, or their perception is, that you're identifying their defects. So it's like you're identifying that they did something wrong, and that's not what the intent is. So the communication skills are also part of being a good auditor. But the objectivity, being able to understand exactly where the standard is coming from, and then also where the standard, why that's part of the standard, and how it all flows together. Because the standards are developed in a tree-like form. It's not where they're the individual pieces, they all fit together.
In addition to what Michael said, the purpose of an audit is not just to go out and say, I got you. Because if you go out and it's to understand the truth, it's to understand how the process is operating, it's to understand how things are working in the shop. And any of us can take something, and if you dig it long enough, you can find somebody that's doing some little thing that's not correct. And I have seen auditors will write down some little trivial thing. That's not helpful. The thing that's helpful is finding something where there are things that are not working correctly. Usually it's not the fault of the person that's doing the thing. But then what's needed is to work with management to figure out how to get things back in compliance.
Anybody here auditors today or work as an auditor? The sole purpose for an auditor, from my perspective, is to seek compliance. If you're looking for compliance to the system, compliance to what they're supposed to be doing, you'll find things that will be beneficial to you. If you go in looking for problems, you're going to have a problem right away. If you go in and seek compliance, I'm looking for this. You say you do this, I want you to show me how you do this. If you seek compliance first, everything else will get better.
Yeah, it's been said, you don't need to be an expert to audit, but it's back to that, a bit of preparation. You need preparation, you need to understand the purpose of the audit. You need to have some basis. Fresh eyes audits or a fresh eye auditor are taking on an audit can sometimes find something that other people haven't seen because they're too expert in the area. I used to use a nice little trick with my team. We'd talk about things, problem solve or audit results, and we'd be talking about how to fix things. And we'd be in a room, and everybody, including myself at times, is, well, I think, and then I think, and I think, and I think. I'd let it go on about 10 minutes, and then I'd stop and say, what have I heard most frequently in the last 10 minutes? I think. I said, stop a minute, let's just be silent. What do we know? Let's get the whiteboard going. Let's start talking about, let's get the I thinks out of here. And what do we know? Let's pull that knowledge out and really try to dig down to the root cause. So on my closing note, I would say those of you who said look like you're all working, if in your organization you hear of an upcoming audit or something, either internal audit or external audit, if you care to, ask if you can be an observer. Maybe be fresh eyes, not part of the official audit, but can you shadow so that you can learn something through that process?
All right, thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And Don, are you gonna have anything else to say?
We have, I have some thank yous. Thank you, Matt, for moderating. He did a super job, I think. How about you? And Matt and Jamin, you have a couple thank you gifts, if you would, please, for our guests. We have, thank you very much. Good to see you guys again. Always a pleasure. And let's hear it for our presenters. A couple little housekeeping issues. Yeah. Said that's my autobiography. Yeah. No, not really. Thank you, Student Services, for the refreshments and the support. Thank you, GRCC Audio Visual, for the support as well, and the training on the video. Laura is up there. Hi, Laura. Still, I think you're still up there and awake. Yep, there she is. Yep, for doing a super job with the video. The video will be available on and televised on GRCC TV, as it was last spring, and it was very well done. And we're hoping for it to look good as well. And I know I'm going to forget thanking somebody. Thank you, GRCC, for the facilities, Ferris for helping sponsor this, the student branch of the American Society for Quality for the planning that you guys put into this, and pulling this off, and just really appreciate that. So, and thank you, everybody, for attending. We have somewhat of a captive audience, some of them, because we have, 37 of my students here, and others, new faces. Appreciate your attendance, and thank you again. Let's hear it for the audience one more time, please, for the speakers. All right. Thanks, folks.
Midnight or whatever you want.
I don't know, I've never seen it. It must have been something. Because all I can think of, should have taken it to 5 according to